I get very excited when I talk about our technology and technology in general, VMware, and then I start talking really fast. I'm like, tell me to slow down. Say, hey, slow down, calm down. And if you don't understand something I said, or I had too much coffee, just ask questions. Keep it very interactive, okay? And then, of course, we can have conversations afterwards and go into as much depth as you want. So thanks for having me, first of all. This all started with a conversation I had with a peer of mine, Claudio, who's out there somewhere, missing my session. And he says, hey, we're going to have the first Naples VMUG. It'd be great if you join. I said, okay. And here I am. And it was 6 months ago, so it's awesome to be here. I've been to Rome before with my wife. I've never been to Naples. I skipped Naples. Everyone teases me about skipping Naples, but this time I'm enjoying Naples a lot. The agenda for today, I don't know why it's bad. It seems like the others were okay, but the agenda for today, we're going to continue this NSX theme that we just had in the previous session, but this time in the context of automation, and specifically vRealize automation. This is my specialty, and a quick introduction about me. I've been with VMware about 6.5 years, and I've spent the last 7 months in the cloud management business unit, and we will get to, it's one of my passions, it's one of my specialties when I was in the field. So in 6.5 years, I was a specialist, I was an account engineer and a principal engineer, and then I came into the cloud management business unit, and now I do what I love to do, and I get paid for it, and it's a lot of fun. I love to talk about technology. I love to demonstrate technology, build and architect solutions, and I do that now globally. And it's an incredible thing to do, and sometimes I can't believe that I get to do it. I come from Washington, D.C., originally from the Middle East, born in Beirut, Lebanon, and then moved to the States way back when, in 1983. To Miami, and then Washington, D.C. for the last 20-some-odd years. This is my backyard. The thing with the U.S., that's not really, it's about 20 miles from my house, but the thing about the U.S. is our oldest thing is newer than the bricks outside on the street here, which is incredible. That's why I love this area, and I love history and Europe and the places I get to see. So my lovely hosts have taken me around. So we came into Rome and then into Naples yesterday. Have taken me around. I've gotten a chance to see this beautiful city, and we walked almost 10 miles yesterday, which was great. But the reality, how I really enjoyed the city, was Baba, which is an Arabic word, which is great. It means father. And that is definitely the father of desserts. Hazelnut coffee, incredible. Anybody know pizza? But the reality, that was that when it was done. We had pizza last night. Absolutely incredible. We've had a great time.
Little different with the American pizza.
Oh, Americans invented pizza. Yeah. Oh, everything comes from. I mean, we invented coffee too. Starbucks invented coffee. So, anyways, it's been great. I get to be here today and tomorrow. But anyways, let's talk about technology. NSX. So I'm not in the NSBU, the Networking and Security Business Unit. But I'm very confident when I say it is probably one of VMware's greatest technologies since vSphere, by far. So how do you take such an incredible technology and make it even more awesome? And that is presentation. That is automation. That is making the consumption of NSX and everything you learned in the last session completely automatic. That means delivering all the use cases we covered without ever touching the NSX manager, the vSphere UI and the plugin, and wherever that's going, without ever touching any one of these components after they've been initially configured, and in some cases, not even that. And automation is, again, it's one of the things that I specialize in, and we're going to very specifically talk about automation of NSX, so networking and security, with application-centric policies in mind. Okay? So essentially, we have all the use cases, and I'll cover those. And vRealize Automation, its core service, its core function is to help you author and deliver services across the enterprise and across the hybrid cloud. And those services could be anything. If you want me to dive deeper into the VRA side of things, I certainly will, but I'm very much going to focus on networking and security for app-centric authoring. Okay? This is actually been one of the topics that's been very popular at VMUG, so I've kind of stuck to it, again, because of NSX and what's happening there. We've come to a point where, in the States anyway, where I talk to a customer, and they're a vSphere customer, and they're looking at different things, been customer for 10 years, whatever, and if we come to the realization that they don't have NSX, it's become a question. Why don't you have NSX? It's become such an automatic part of the infrastructure. It doesn't matter if you're Cisco for 20 years. It doesn't matter if you're a Juniper shop or a Brocade shop or anything. If you're in the business of delivering application services or DevOps or test dev or release automation or anything that delivers and manages and lifecycles applications, VMs, mini VMs, it doesn't matter. NSX has to be part of that architecture. Because in NSX, you're going to gain all the great things that vSphere brought you. Okay? Now, we talked a lot about what the individual pieces of NSX is. So I'm done selling NSX. Now we're going to talk about how NSX and this solution, vRealize Automation, come together. And for the record, I was told to talk slowly. I'm hoping I'm talking slow enough. Okay. They come together in VRA in a very native way. So who here has played with or demoed or seen vRealize Automation? Okay. Everybody else, we need to get you to the hands-on labs or VMUG. What about have heard of vRealize Automation? Okay. Okay. Very good. So, so I have to give you a little bit of a recap. vRealize Automation is our cloud automation and cloud management tool. In vRealize Automation, it abstracts the underlying infrastructure, so vSphere in this case, or it can be AWS or public cloud, or it's actually heterogeneous, so Hyper-V, Zein, KVM, OpenStack. It's all pre-configured when you install vRealize Automation. vRealize Automation helps you build logical constructs, I call them virtual data centers, and cloud fabrics, so that you can then build and define applications that are configured into these infrastructures that are scalable, of course. And then from that point forward, it's all about building and provisioning applications. So users come into a custom portal. They say, I want a Windows box, or I want a SQL cluster, or I want a multi-tier, multi-stage DevOps platform. It doesn't matter. vRealize Automation delivers all of that to you to a catalog. The building tool, I'll talk a little bit about. But one of the greatest benefits when a solution like NSX and a solution like vRealize Automation come together is the automation part. And in vRealize Automation, when I get a machine or a request from the service catalog, I go through governance, I go through a life cycle, I go through provisioning things, and the automation component of that is everything I do before, during, and after the request. So today you have vSphere, and you have vCenter. And think of where you were 5 years ago or further. Today with vSphere, if I want a Windows or a Linux machine, I right-click and deploy from template. And then, depending on the storage platform, in seconds or minutes, I have an exact replica of that gold master. Okay? That changed the world. And this is why VMware exists. That's fantastic. But why does it still take most enterprises 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks to get that machine into production? This is a huge problem. If I can copy it in a minute, why does it take 4 weeks to deliver it? The problem is all the dependencies for provisioning the machine in the first place, my storage, network, compute, all the infrastructure pieces, my security, my load balancers. Do I have the appropriate network? Is the VLAN configured properly? Do I have all the firewall rules? During provisioning, do I have to plug into a ServiceNow or a Remedy or some sort of ITIL, a configuration management tool? Do I have to install agents? Do I have to make it part of a backup infrastructure? Post-provisioning, do I have to add it to a domain? Do I have to make the requester give them local rights? And every one of those steps have very manual legacy processes behind them. So you as the vAdmin, in 2 minutes or a minute, can have that machine ready and essentially ready to go. The old processes where I have to physically touch everything and open tickets and create records and do all these things, this is the part that vRealize Automation solves. And we haven't even started talking about networking. The networking piece is probably the most critical from a security perspective. It typically has the most amount of governance, meaning, so I was an architect for a big systems integrator, Lockheed Martin, and no matter how quickly I delivered services, there's what we call red tape. A lot of old legacy, outdated processes that needed to be followed before I can go and tell the customer or whoever, hey, your set of machines are ready. All of those processes need to be modernized and automated. And these are the pieces that are taking the most amount of time. The networking and security team was by far the slowest. They're the slowest to provide the services. They're the slowest to approve any request. They want to talk about why this, why that. Why do I need a VLAN? Oh, I'm going to give you this much IP, IP scope, even though I have the whole world available to me. We want to take that out of the picture.
2 weeks for network, 2 time, 2 minutes for delivery machine.
Exactly. The process, the red tape, the silos, even the storage, but mostly the networking and the firewall. So, we're going to talk about the use cases. When does this come into play? And you've learned a lot in the previous session. But there's a very important aspect to network provisioning, and that's network decommissioning. For anybody who's part of any decent-sized network, when you provision services, even if all the services are manual today, traditional, what happens when you pull that machine off the network, when it's retired? What do you do with all the ACLs, the firewall rules, the load balancers, the records, the IPs? How do you free all of that up? There's IPAM, there's point products, right? We have IPAM, we have the individual network managers, etc. But is there a process to undo the entire network? No. What happens is we go into an enterprise and there's 5,000 rules that aren't actually protecting anything. And in fact, they are focused on an IP address. And that IP address might be reused. And if it's reused and that previous ACL or security policy protected a specific application, and now it's being reused because some other application has that IP, this is a major threat. This is a major problem. So vRealize Automation is not only going to give you the initial provisioning and provision the entire ecosystem, networking, security, and everything else, but when you kill that application, it undoes everything. This is almost more important than automating it in the first place, from a security perspective. Okay? So in the US, for the first 6 years at VMware, I was in the US public sector. So my customers had 100,000 virtual machines. The entire Navy fleet was running on VMware. And we're talking about tens of thousands of virtual machines. And we really focus on the software-defined data center because of, if you think of the US Navy, the folks who are coming on board and going onto a carrier and provisioning machines, these are 18-year-olds coming, or 20-year-olds, fresh out of the school, coming in as a brand new soldier, and you're telling them, here's the cloud. It's a floating cloud, but it's a cloud. Go do all this stuff. One of the requirements for building an architecture for any organization in the military or the DoD is to make it as stupid-proof as possible. Because you bring on brand new soldiers, brand new Navy personnel, and these are the ones who started the low jobs, and then they work up. And they have no idea what a cloud is a lot of the time, but they are expected to run an infrastructure on an entire floating vessel that has 3,000 or 4,000 virtual machines running across the entire thing. So SDDC is a godsend for those types of solutions and automation. Anyway, we're talking little baby steps to massive enterprise scale and DoD military type of scale. And then the security is a whole different conversation. At VMworld, you might hear from Target, maybe. I don't know if you guys know Target. It's a big retailer in the US who has had a major breach that cost them tens of millions of dollars, and they've completely replatformed to provide app-centric everything. And they're using a lot of our tools for it. Okay, I'm on slide 1. Let me go on. So the use cases. You heard about microsegmentation. You heard about some of the capabilities from distributed routing, distributed switching, distributed firewall, east-west, north-south, north-south. And a lot of these tools you can hand over to your networking and security team or the same vAdmin, it doesn't matter, and they can follow the UIs that you saw previously and configure all these rules. Or, if we bring it into a solution like VRA, all of those rules just happen. And one of the goals in these use cases is to actually deliver all of that. But understanding the networking and security teams don't typically just say, sure, here you go, cloud admins, you can have all the networking and security. They want control. The InfoSec people, they want control. They want a reason to live, right? They want to justify their paycheck. So they're going to fight back and argue and everything. So you say, okay, you know what? NSX is new. You are adopting it. You can have NSX, and I'm just going to consume it through my application. So we've got a scope. There's the hopping on the NSX bandwagon, all the way up to complete automation of networking and security that lives around the life cycle of a virtual machine. There are many different options to do that, and VMware, understanding this journey, we make all of them possible. In this example, a machine is today. So I have routers and firewalls and load balancers that will scale, the policy will scale the entire size of the cluster and the cloud infrastructure. So scalability is not a weakness in this world. The other use case, this is the baby steps. This is, okay, I have NSX, I have VRA. I'm going to give the keys to my networking and security team, and I'm going to say, you know what, until you are comfortable, in the US we call it a warm fuzzy, doesn't sound nice, until you are comfortable with the fact that this is the way networking and security is going, you go ahead and pre-provision everything, and when I configure VRA, it's just going to run an inventory and consume it. It'll be the top consumer of that infrastructure. And in this case, all I'm doing is deploying applications into pre-configured NSX resources, including the security groups, the microsegmentation, the individual networks around the tiers. And this is actually what VRA does better than anything else. It consumes infrastructure. VRA is the top consumer in our cloud management portfolio. Okay. So let's talk about how it all comes together. Now, if you've never seen VRA before, maybe this is sexy, maybe it's not. VRA 7 was released, it was announced at VMworld Barcelona, and released in December. Major leap forward from the previous versions of VRA, and that was the 6 platform, which was a huge leap forward from the previous platform, which was the company we acquired, Dynamic Ops, 3.5 years ago. In VRA 7, the theme was user experience and time to value. And those mean a lot of things, very important things. That means no matter the size of your organization, there is a way to put this product to work. It's a difference between being able to do all the tasks that you are able to do and manage application service delivery, or even if you're just requesting a machine. One of the top use cases is to pull folks out of vCenter and add controls and governance and approvals and lifecycle management. So you don't have to constantly connect into vCenter and do all these provisioning policies. But when we bring in NSX and the other automation tools, or the automation integrations, now I'm requesting a machine and everything is just done for me. And as the app architect or as the admin in the organization, I can do a lot of other things that I've kept pushing away. Okay? So for smaller organizations, they benefit greatly. For enterprises, it's just a matter of taking that 4-week or 6-week window down to 1 week or 1 day. Okay? The service designer, called the Converged Blueprint Designer, CBP, is completely new and was focused on that user experience. So I deploy VRA, which has been completely revamped as well. Won't get into that. To deliver services, I go into the design and I configure all my services in the unified designer. This is where NSX and VRA become very visible. I can't really see it too well on the screen here. The resolution's a little messed up. That actually looks quite bad. The CBP is, and you know what, if you want to see more about this, I'll show you directly from my laptop. It is a unified designer that allows me to drag and drop the OSs, drag and drop the software components that I define, and more importantly, drag and drop networking. In this case, I have a load balancer on demand. I have an on-demand routed network. I've got security groups protecting my web tier and a security group protecting my database tier. And up top, I'm using app isolation for microsegmentation. This will get deployed onto whichever network, upstream network, and every single deployment will have all these logical networks and protections wrapped around them. And when I undo or destroy this machine, I will pull all these network components out. The routed network automatically creates an interface on the upstream router and configures it for the new network, the IP scope, or the subnet that is configured for VRA, for this particular application. Every application will get its own network and subnet. If I deploy this 1 time, great. 100 times, no problem. What you don't see, load balancers and security groups to consume security policies and create a new security group. And then, of course, any existing network and a NATed network. So it basically covers all of the primary NSX use cases. But more importantly is I never have to worry about all those manual processes again. And we're solving the biggest challenge here, which is networking and security. So leveraging NSX with VRA. But when we extend VRA into the broader ecosystem, I'm hitting the entire stack. It's a full stack solution. Okay. Drag and drop application services, drag and drop, dynamically build a F5 load balancer, automate Active Directory or info blocks or all of those services. I drag them and drop them, bind them to my services, and at request time and provisioning time, everything is just done automatically. And I'm upset that this picture isn't going to really do it justice, but if you are interested, please see me. So at the end of the day, you log into VRA, and I'll walk you through this. I had all this in slides, but I figured I'd just record it and walk through it.
So here's the VRA catalog, and this is our end result. This is where we want to be. What's abstracted at this point, first of all, I create all my services under my catalogs. So I have IaaS, I have networking and security, I have my platform services, and I have my public cloud services, AWS, vCloud Air, so on and so forth. So this is my catalog. When I request any one of these services, the user, whether I'm just a nobody or an architect or somebody who's actually delivering a service or a customer, they request a machine, and I don't want to think about everything that's happening in the background. I don't even want to think about the platform or if it's on-prem or if it's in the public cloud or where it's getting deployed. That is not the requester's business. The business or the line of business makes that decision, and it's all baked into the policy. So here I've defined my software components, and I also have this other option called XaaS. And XaaS used to be called 10 minutes. Oh my gosh. You have to add more. You told me to talk slow. Okay. XaaS allows me to create anything as a service through the XaaS designer. So maybe I move this on because this is going to take half of the 10 minutes. All right. So creating a brand new service, I go into the Design tab, and I create a blueprint. And the blueprint is where everything comes together. At this point, I've already collected inventory. I've built some basic policy. The blueprint allows me to select my NSX infrastructure and NSX policies, the VXLAN, before I even get started. It makes NSX a very important part of that application. And I also select app isolation for that micro-segmentation use case. So if I have 10 applications being deployed that are identical to each other, all landing on the same upstream network, every single one of those deployments, even though they're on the same layer 2, will be completely isolated from the other, as well as the individual tiers. Very much app-centric security. And nobody can do that. Nobody at that level. Okay? So here, what it normally is a very nice grid view, and I'm dragging and dropping my services. So these are my OSs that I've configured. I've got a Windows 2012 box over here. I define this one as the web tier. I'm defining this one as the database tier, and it's essentially just drag and drop. Once I configure the individual components, and I can do a couple of different things. I can build my basic template, or I can consume existing templates. If I am the application architect, I don't want to build what a CentOS machine is or what a Windows machine is. I want to consume my gold masters, drag them and drop them, and start building the application. So here I'm dragging and dropping things like .NET, IIS, a SQL server on top of my Windows box, and I've configured my application. Can you even make that out? Can you see that? Yeah, I almost want to show everybody what's on my screen so you can see the better picture. So then I jump over to networking and security, and this is where NSX comes in. And for this use case, I want to build a dedicated routed network so that when I deploy this machine, it lands on its own subnet, and that network advertises via OSPF or whatever to the upstream networks if I wanted to, or I could even create static routes. I literally drag it and drop it. And the other thing I want to do, let's just say my enterprise has a requirement to separate the tiers. So I'm going to jump up to networking and security. I'm sorry, my networking categories, and bring over an existing security group. And this is my InfoSec folks predefined a policy that says this is how we protect Windows or web servers. This is how we protect database servers, etc. I just drag them and drop them right onto this canvas. And I'm selecting the policy I want to use, and then I bind it all together. And once I bind it all together, well, I also actually want to bring in a load balancer, because in this policy, I want to allow the requester to have as many web front ends as they want. But if I have more than 2 or more than 1, I need to automatically configure a load balancer. Now, I could do that manually, and we know how long that will take. Or I can drag and drop an on-demand load balancer and have NSX automatically configure all the interfaces, all the legs, the VIP, and the round-robin load balancing policy that I default. Okay? And this is all done at request time. Nobody has to do anything unless specifically there's a manual process that is required by your organization. So that load balancer is brought over. Right now what I'm doing is binding the individual networks. Load balancer is brought over, and then I'll have my finished application, which looks like this, if you could even see it. Multi-tier application, networks, load balancer, security, and then I publish it, and I'm good to go. Now, where we're going with this is NSX extending to public cloud infrastructures. There's going to be a lot of talk about how do we take NSX to Google Cloud or Amazon or IBM or vCloud Air and some of these other stuff that some of it's already being demoed, right? The other piece is the applications. In this case, I created that same exact application use case in Amazon without rewriting the app. Now, the next step would be to get the network out there, which is something we're working on. Okay. Once I build that application with all of its network policy and all the networks included, I can export the whole thing in JSON, in YAML format. So that entire blueprint and all that detail that I put all that work in is a 100K YAML file, human readable, plain text in English, and I hand it over to my peers and say, hey, import this. This is my multi-tier web app. Check it out. I import it. I tie it to my logic, which is unique to my environment, and I'm ready to go.
Always in a JSON format.
Yes, and so it's JSON, it's a YAML doc, and then we're, in the next release, we're going to be supporting the Tosca standard for a blueprint as code. But yeah, it's JSON. It used to be XML, you couldn't really read it. This is pretty awesome. So that multi-tier web app, I can come in here and say, you know what, I wanted the blueprint to actually have 2 vCPU minimum, and I wanted these different networks and different security groups. You could edit that in text. You could automate this to a point where I build a blueprint and it automatically exports the YAML and the JSON into a Git. And I can have collaboration in Git and automatically bring it back in and have versioning of my blueprints. You can get quite sophisticated. And then beyond that is extending. So I very much focus on out of the box. What happens when you hit the tick mark and configure NSX for VRA? Everything I showed you is I install VRA, tick NSX and build my logic, and now I'm consuming. For everything else, beyond all the native integrations, we have extensibility. And the extensibility is one of our big differentiators. And that means, in this example, if I have an application that is using a particular NSX policy, and it is at this state in its provisioning lifecycle, or in any time in its lifecycle, go do something. Run a workflow, run a script, doesn't matter. And with that, it's an incredibly powerful capability that I can say automatically open and track a ticket in ServiceNow, automatically close that ticket when I get a successful provisioning. Alert the world that this machine's coming out there. Do anything you want to do. And this could be done automatically behind the scenes at any lifecycle stage, during, after, post provisioning. It can be done when I'm actually doing something, running an action on that machine. We have very governed and regulated environments where when a person connects to VMRC, to the console, I want to open a ticket and let people know, have an audit trail. I can do that through extensibility. Anytime I'm using a particular security group, now the networking and security team says, automation, that's baloney. We can't do automation because I need visibility. Then I show them that they have more visibility, more control, and more capability than they've ever been able to do with a legacy physical system, ever. And that gives them a little bit of relief. And then I show them, and the story's done, okay? And unfortunately, VRA and NSX aren't necessarily sold together, unfortunately. There's the VRA, there's the vRealize suite, and then there's NSX, which is a separate component. But depending on the maturity of the enterprise, they're almost what we say a no-brainer. Right? They almost are perfectly delivered and implemented together because of all this added capability. X as a service, so everything I don't do natively with NSX, I have a plugin. And that plugin I will consume while I'm doing automation, but I can also deliver NSX as a service very quickly using what's called the X as designer. The X as designer allows me, which is anything as a service, allows me to use vRealize Orchestrator and in about 5 clicks deliver any workflow and anything that workflow does as a service, as a governed lifecycle managed service. Somebody tweeted, I'm very passionate about XAS and some of the use cases we can do, and somebody, I was doing an executive brief and I said, you know what, if my coffee machine had an API, I can literally deliver coffee as a service. So this guy goes out and buys an API-enabled power switch, plugged his coffee machine into it, and had a 1-0 on-off command send to that digital switch, and he delivered coffee as a service.
With workflow for espresso.
Yeah. I'm sure you could also you can have multiple switches and have different flavors, right? And he did it in like 5 minutes. It was incredible. Coffee as a service. I can have coffee automatically dripped for me or made for me while I'm waiting for a machine to be provisioned. That is the power of XAS and extensibility. These are real use cases. So whether you are delivering or modifying a security policy or delivering a brand new edge gateway, creating a new security group that is then going to be consumed by applications, delivering any network, anything with a REST API essentially, or any of the native integrations as a service, or relying strictly on all the native integration with NSX and VRA that nobody else can do. There's every use case in the book. I'd say the sky's the limit. But this was an example of that. And the XAS designer, and I'm sure I'm over. I'm not going to let this video run. It's about 2 minutes. But here I walk through creating an XAS service to automatically create a security group and add any vSphere VM to that security group. So I'm going beyond the initial scope of VRA and NSX and the native integration that we deliver through the product. And I'm using XAS, and in a couple of minutes, I can deliver any NSX service, but again, any service, as a catalog item or as a day 2 operation, which is an action on a machine that's already provisioned. And that's really what I'm showing there. And then one other final piece, something that I'm about to publish is, we talked about how VRA consumes NSX and automates NSX, but there's this whole other conversation about VRA itself. vRealize Automation is an enterprise tool. And as an enterprise tool, you want it highly available. You want it secure. You want it distributed. And we have a reference architecture to use NSX to provide that security tier, the high availability, the load balancing, and the security policy for a VRA instance. So it's VRA on NSX, and it's NSX consumed by VRA. It's a full circle. So I've provided a ton of detail, and I'm going to be publishing all this on my blog very soon, on how to do that with NSX. Our documentation says do this, do this, do this. It doesn't really give you a lot of help in actually going and implementing a solution. So that's really the gap I'm filling here. But essentially, we start with logical switches, my edge router, all NSX policies here. We've got the VIPs that are created by NSX in the Edge Services Gateway. We've got the individual policies for VRA itself, for the different components of VRA, automatically load balance, all the health services, all the security, everything I need to actually implement VRA itself. This is also going to be a VMUG session. Okay? Some more info here. I'll share this deck. And with that, we will do 3 minutes of questions.
Domanda?
Everybody's ready to go sign.
Manager, so life cycle of the VM. So when you end the life cycle of the VM, freeware, source network, created from VM. So Macabre, SCL.
Yeah. So when we provision a machine, obviously in vSphere, I automatically assign a VMware reserved MAC address. Okay. and the machines don't really care what it is. Every instantiation of that machine gets a unique MAC address and is automatically assigned an IP address from the network pool. And whether that's tied into an external service like IPAM, doesn't matter. We have an option to create exact replicas. So if anybody who's done hands-on labs at VMware, every hands-on lab we deploy is an exact replica of the other. Same IPs, same MAC, same names. And we have NSX and its predecessor, ECNS, that protect the entire boundary of that 18-node pod. And we can do that in VRA. VRA is not that's all done in vCloud Director, but in VRA with the same networking tools, we can do the same exact thing. So lifecycle managing happens at any level, either the entire deployment, or down to the individual machine, or down to the networking services. So when we lifecycle, we lifecycle any one of those components, but by default, we lifecycle the entire deployment, which is all the tiers, all the components. I'm not sure if I understood your question, but all the MAC addresses, all that stuff is reported back into vRealize Automation, and I could even
reassign
create
resource for other machine.
I'm sorry?
Reassign resource for other machine, like others,
Yeah, so I could do all of that automatically or manually. I could even report back what's been assigned, how it's consuming my network, and of course we've got a broader cloud management platform that allows you to drill much deeper into that. I could look at individual performance metrics at individual machines per MAC address, per IP. But keep in mind also from just a different topic real quick, for networking and security, one huge benefit of NSX is that I'm living and implementing this in a very logical methodology.